Craft and compel your audience. So happy you're back with us. Today, we're going to talk about how do you have consistency in the way that your people are communicating. What we know is that we have up to 7 audiences. Any organization has about 7 audiences that they could be interacting with. Those audiences can be our people internally. They can be our partners. They can be our prospects. They can be our current customers. They can be our internal executive leadership. They can be our shareholders. And they can even be our current investors. So we have these audiences that any of us might have. And what we have to consider is how are we developing consistency in the way that we are communicating? How do we have everyone, as unique as they all are, as personalized as they may be in their role, how are they committed and wanting to commit to an overall narrative that everyone is communicating? Now, first of all, why do we even want this? Why would an organization want this? Well, one, if we have everyone communicating the same narrative, the same core narrative, then it improves our brand. It improves who we are and the problems we solve, and everyone in the marketplace knows that. Number two, it allows us that when a buyer, when a customer, when a person internally or a leader, when they're moving from role to role, or they're moving from first touch to second touch, or throughout the process, if they are a prospect, or they're going from prospect to then customer, that they are hearing the same thing from the next person. I think about this in restaurants. I think about that in Chick-fil-A. I have never been to a Chick-fil-A that I didn't hear someone say, "My pleasure." Now, that might be a core narrative for them that we want to let everyone know it is our pleasure to serve them. And we hear it from place to place to place. And now it's grown so much and done so well over the last 10 years that I hear it almost in every place I go to. It literally was a narrative that Chick-fil-A started that then grew to other restaurants, to other places. That narrative allows everyone to know that when you go to a Chick-fil-A, whether you like the food or not, when you go there, it's their pleasure to serve you. And I can only think of maybe one experience in 30 years that it didn't feel like it was their pleasure, that they didn't do a good job. And so when we think about our organizations and we're selling a product, we're selling a service, we want our people to be having a narrative that when that prospect goes to signing a contract to become a customer, that then they can go and share that narrative. They can share that story with someone else that then increases a referral. So from the moment they see your website all the way to the moment they sign the contract, they should be able to hear the same story throughout, the same narrative throughout, that then they go tell other people. If a person, the day that they get hired and interviewed, all the way through the moment that they get promoted, that they grow in the company, or potentially they leave, they need to be hearing the same narrative and messaging internally. It will improve productivity and performance because we accomplish this by creating a corporate narrative. So what that really means is that it can be a narrative that is going to be constructed and used strategically in sales and in marketing and customer service. But this narrative is also going to be the one that we lean on as a barometer for all the decisions that we're making internally. So if our narrative is a term, a concept that we all believe in, that we know, then I can communicate that narrative in a way that feels right to me. But I'm not leaving the core narrative of who we are. And so if it's something like we want to make every person feel like they're a customer even when they're not. Okay, so we want to make every single person feel like a customer before they're a customer. If that's a narrative that we want to share based upon what we have, then that means that is how we treat everyone. That before you've committed, before you signed on the dotted line, before you've given us any money, we're going to make you feel like a customer now. So if we think about that internally, before the person has performed the job or had the results, we're going to treat them as that person. So that narrative shared throughout could be extremely powerful in the way it impacts our sales, the way it impacts our marketing, the way it's going to impact our people internally, and the way we're communicating that throughout. That everyone knows, hey, here we get treated like our best self. And when we get treated like our best self, we aspire to that. So we hear that over and over. It can be extremely powerful. Remember that our people will always respond to a narrative before they will respond to a statement of facts. So when I'm working with an employee and I'm trying to get them to perform at a higher level or to increase the growth of whatever they do, or just to get better results, maybe hit some KPIs, we have to recognize that a narrative is what is going to connect their hands to their hearts and then their hands to their work. But a statement of facts only feels like hands work, hands work, hands work. Do they really care about me? Hands work, hand work. I don't know. And what are you competing for when you're talking with people? You're competing for their attention. You're competing with this audience to get their attention. The best story is what earns you the most attention. And if you don't tell that story effectively, what occurs is that this person is now looking for that story somewhere else. They're looking for it on LinkedIn. They're looking for it from a recruiter. They're looking at it from another business. They're finding that in their side hustle, whatever it might be. So you don't want to be an organization that doesn't have a clear narrative that everyone can say, I back this narrative. This is what I'm about. And that starts from the moment someone is getting hired and the onboarding and then whatever position they're in and how they get promoted and their exit interview and all those things. Now, the question is, okay, well, who needs to be involved when we're creating this? Well, quite honestly, the easiest part is it's got to start with leadership. Our leadership has to believe in this narrative. Our executive leaders have to believe in this narrative, that they believe in it so much that when they consider what it is, it then is easily being able to disseminate it down into the proper people so that they continue to pass it down. There are plenty of organizations out there that we have seen across time. You know, you look at Apple, I would say Apple's core narrative is think different. That's their core narrative. So whenever they have an employee that's trying to help a customer, they're thinking about, how do I think about this in a different way to help them? Or when we're thinking about our prospect, we want our prospects to be people that think differently. This is why you need a Mac. This is why you need an iPhone. This is why you need an iPad. We're going to think differently. So when we think about that core narrative, now they want their people to think differently. They want to challenge the people they want to hire people that think differently. They want to hire engineers that think differently. That's how they've seen their growth, is because they stay committed to that core narrative. And the way each manager gets to look at someone and say, Chris, you think differently. I need you to think differently in this moment. You're getting caught up in the old ways of thinking. We need to take a moment to be innovative. How do we be innovative? How do we lean on the core of who we are? Sometimes when the work comes back, it's like, is this work different? Is it better? Is it innovative? Because that's what we do here at Apple. And so when you think about that narrative, it is what allows people to say, I belong here. I'm safe here. I have a place here. I know where I'm going here. I can be vulnerable here. Hey, I'm having a tough time. Think differently. Can we get in a brainstorming session? Can we talk with other people? Can there be some synergy? Excuse me. So when we're creating this narrative, there's a couple questions to think about. Number one, what is the better future that your organization is creating? Your product, your service, what is the better future you're creating? I talked about that last week, but that is ultimately what anyone's considering. Is there a better future story with this organization, with this person, with this product, with this service? Is there a better future than the one that I'm on track to have now without them? So what is the better future? What is the change that we can offer to get to the better future? What's the change that we can offer? Not necessarily the problem we can solve. What is the change? What's the change that can offer? It's the problem we can solve isn't bad, but we should always, I believe Andy Raskin is who talks about this. We should start with the change not with the problem. Talk about the change and let our buyer, our prospect, think about the problem that is in the way of getting to that change. So what are we doing? We're promising a better future. If this change can occur, you can have the better future. So really, we need to think about those two primary things. And then number three, we need to think about what is our culture. What is our culture? How does everyone here feel about the culture that we've created? On a different video, maybe next week, we're going to talk about how are we creating culture in a remote work environment? How are we communicating in a remote work environment to create the culture that we need? Because it's extremely difficult. We've got some thoughts on that. We'll talk about it next week. So lastly, what is this thing that we are creating? Well, we're creating a messaging matrix. And what this is that we're creating this matrix for each group of people. So I'm going to run down a list here. So if you think about HR, we got to create an internal messaging matrix. How are we communicating with each of these teams and these groups and these people? How are we communicating with people that aren't in our organization yet and communicating with people that are in our organization? And how are we doing it in a way that motivates them, that encourages them, that engages them to want to work at a high level, as well as be committed to this narrative, this strategic narrative that we created, this corporate narrative we created. Same with our managers, managing teams. We got to think about sales and marketing. They're communicating externally. They're communicating to our prospects, to our future customers. And they have to have a narrative that they can use in a sales deck, in a presentation, in content marketing, in web copy, in their social media. And if you notice, like if we can align the internal and the external, and then we align, BDMs, business development, that are working with our customers, customer managers, success managers, customer service. They're dealing with customers. Maybe they're trying to increase customer spend. Well, we want them to know the narrative. We want them to know the narrative so well that then when someone says a partner or a networking event or whatever, yeah, you're really trying to do this. Oh, you should check out Chris Watson at Craft and Compel. He's really helped us align our strategic messaging. Our brand's grown. People know us. Our exposure's gone up, which increases our inbound more than we ever thought. Oh, really? Yeah, he is all about making sure that insert narrative. Can they tell your story? Remember, the goal is how do we help our people, our partners, our prospects, our customers all understand who we are, what we're about, and how do we create a messaging matrix for doing that effectively, a strategic communication plan. So at Craft and Compel, what we are, what I'm seeing and feeling is right now we are starting to see a real shift to attention. How are we gaining attention? Because I think we're seeing a cycle, and this happens very frequently. We're seeing a cycle of it's all starting to sound the same. And when you have an educated internal person, you have an educated prospect, you have an educated customer, if it all starts sounding the same, then they need a disruptive voice. They need something different. They need a change. And what we know is that it's like raising a child. You're trying to be the guide. You're trying to be the most important voice for this child because you want them to stay engaged. You want them to trust you. You want them to respect you. You want them to hear the knowledge and the lessons that you're trying to teach them because you're trying to develop a relationship, but you're also trying to help them perform at a high level. And I like to believe that that's what leaders want for their people. That's what salespeople want for their prospects. And that's what, customer success managers want for their customers. When we think about those groups of people, we want them to succeed. But here's why it's become more difficult. There are even more voices than ever before that these groups of people are experiencing. That is through social media. That is through outbound marketing. That is through the loads of videos. That is every social media, every social media platform that's out there. That is our government. That is COVID. That is, the list goes on and on and on of what that is. But when we're dealing with all these voices, what is the one that we tune into? What is the narrative that we're tuned into? What is the story that we're tuned into? Because I can promise you, the one that offers me the most hope, the one that offers me the stability, the one that offers me the guide to getting to the future I want is the one I'm going to listen to. So keep that in mind with every single person that you're listening to. Our framework here at Craft and Compel is, what is their story? What is our story or your story? And then what is our story together? What's that future story together? What I would encourage you to do is that go take an assessment, go look internally and say, if we went and asked all of our customers how we've changed their world, how we've given them a better future, if our salespeople will start tuning into, what does our deck look like? What does it set up to do? What's the message behind it? If someone on the external was just to go read your deck without you being there, without you being able to narrate it, would they be excited? Would they even know what the message is? And then ask your people internally, what are we about? What do we stand for? What's our core message here? And see if there's alignment. Then go ask your leadership, each individual leader, and what do we stand for? What's our narrative? Because until each person is telling the same story, belief in the same story, moving towards the same direction, you're never going to reach your full revenue. You're never going to reach your full potential. You're never going to grow your brand. You're never going to increase referrals. Those things will not happen because you had too many disjointed narratives and stories internally. We are here every Tuesday and Thursday, 12:30 Central, 1:30 Eastern time. On Thursday, we will have someone new coming on and telling a story, and we'll break down that story. We'll try to improve that narrative for them and how it is impacting their audience, how it is challenging their audience, how it is engaging their audience. I appreciate you. I hope this was impactful today. If you're in a situation where you're trying to improve some sort of messaging, whether that be internal or external or with the customer, whether that be sales or marketing or leadership, send me a DM. I'm on LinkedIn. If you can't find us there, then you can go to www.craftandcompel.com and message me through that. Hope you have a fantastic Tuesday.